これより世界のユースケースに見るブロックチェーンの可能性をテーマに
Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to start the panel discussion session titled Potential of Blockchain in Global Use Cases. Please allow me to introduce the panelists. First, we have from Trade IX, the Regional Head of Asia Pacific, Mr. Leon Scott, CEO of Digital Ventures, Mr. Orapon Chenyan, and CEO of Monetago, we have Mr. Jesse Chenard. From NTT Data, we have from Digital Strategy Promotion Section, Business Strategy Department, Mr. Yoshiharu Akahane. And lastly, this session will be moderated by Mr. Shinichiro Yamazaki, Global Head of Trade Innovation of SMBC. I will hand over to Mr. Yamazaki to facilitate the session. Thank you.
山崎様、お願いいたします。
はい、かしこまりました。ご来場のお客様、オンラインでご視聴されている皆さん、セッションのモデレーターを務めます、三井住友銀行トレードファイナンス営業部、I am the Global Head of Trade Innovation, Deputy General Manager, Global Trade Finance Department, Shinichiro Yamazaki. The title is The Potential of Blockchain in Global Use Cases in the US, UK, Thailand, Japan. From 4 areas, we have panelists who are promoting business in this area. Yesterday, Mr. Oshima, our Deputy President, joined another session of this program, Digital Transformation Situation of our institution was introduced. Those who are actually working in the digital transformation area are with us. What is expected to change? The impression might be vague or ambiguous. The transformation occurring may not be clear. But what changes are possible? What technologies are available? The impression might be vague. As for myself, currently, digital transformation activities are conducted in Singapore. I am also stationed in Singapore, and multiple platforms are used in different jurisdictions. And therefore, the coverage of blockchain, the coverage, the literacy by the people over the blockchains are different depending on the jurisdiction. And we have panelists from different jurisdictions. They will tell us about what technology they are promoting. What might be the potential impact of digital transformation over our lives? What are the solutions that we can expect by the use of blockchain? These will be introduced, followed by discussions. I will introduce the panelists, and I will change my language.
Leon, I would like to pass you the floor to introduce yourself and work group.
Thank you. Konnichiwa, Yumimashite, Watashi wa Leon desu. Firstly, a big thanks to our good friends and partners SMBC for the invitation to speak today. My name is Leon Scott. I am the Regional Head of Asia and Middle East for Trade IX, the company behind the Marco Polo Network, the global blockchain-based network for trade and working capital. Prior to Trade IX, I worked in a number of roles for HSBC, BHL, and Prime Revenue across Asia Pacific and Europe. Looking first at Yamazaki-san's question around the impact of technology on society. Technology has dramatically changed the face of many industries around the world and created entirely new industries. There are applications on your smartphone for almost every part of your life, personal and business. It has made the world more connected, changed societies, raised income levels, and enabled small companies to emerge and to, in some cases, challenge established players. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said about the industry of global trade and trade finance. It is an industry that is relied upon by every country in the world to raise their GDP and living standards, but it is still operating primarily on emails and paper documents being couriered around the world. And the Japanese economy is particularly reliant on paper. There are some good reasons for this. Global trade is incredibly complex. It involves many parties, countries, documents, and there have been some technology improvements over time. SWIFT was developed in the 1970s and remains the backbone of payments and trade messaging. Banks have developed their own customer portals, and more recently, third-party companies have developed platforms over the last 10 or so years to provide independent applications for trade. But these platforms, although they provide a good service, they're typically limited to a single product or a limited group of users. And the reason they cannot scale to be an industry-wide platform is because of the technology that has been available up until now. These technologies are typically centralized platforms with single databases, where all companies must put their data in one location and access one platform to perform and interact with one another. When you look at industry-wide technology, there are a few must-have requirements. The first is security and privacy. Each party must retain absolute control over their own data. The trust and provenance of data being exchanged. What I see is what you see. Transparency and auditability. No single vendor risk. And it should ideally be an open network, which means other developers can add additional applications and services to the network, freely and openly. The good news is that technology required to achieve these is now available. It is still new, but it is available. Blockchain, and more specifically R3's Corda technology, is the only way to achieve all of these requirements together. But also, as important, is cloud and APIs. And this brings me to the Marco Polo network, which is a blockchain-based network for trade and working capital focused on open accounts. The network is a collaboration effort initially between banks and corporates with technology companies, and the ecosystem will organically expand as we grow. Marco Polo is an entirely decentralized or distributed network, which means every participant is independent from one another and exchanges data and assets securely and seamlessly on a peer-to-peer basis. Marco Polo is multi-solution, multi-bank, and multi-corporate, and it is an open network. We intend to work with other networks in the industry, such as some of those on this panel with me today, the likes of NTT Data's Trade Waltz, Monetago, Digital Ventures, and others such as Contour. From a single connection, users can immediately interact with any other network user on a peer-to-peer basis. They can exchange digital data, such as purchase orders, invoices, shipping information, and they can access multiple trade and working capital solutions from their network of banks. Users can benefit from network effects. Every time a new organization joins, the value of the Marco Polo network increases for every other participant. And importantly, it can connect to existing workflows and processes typically managed in an ERP system, for example. We have been testing Marco Polo extensively, and we are very happy and proud to now have production applications. These are receivables discounting and payment commitment. Payment commitment is a new digital trade settlement method where a bank provides commitment to pay based on the matching of digital trade data. It can be an alternative to a letter of credit or an alternative even to open account. And the third solution that will be available this year is called Supplier Pay. This has the potential to have the most impact. It is a procure-to-pay solution combining supply chain finance with a single channel for payments. And most importantly, it is available to all suppliers, right down to the smallest supplier. We do this by leveraging the latest technology to automate and streamline the onboarding process. Suppliers who have not able to access trade finance products as an independent company are able to leverage the financial standing of their customer to request early payment of their invoices and dramatically improve their cash flow. Which takes me back to the original question from Yamazaki-san. What changes or solutions can blockchain bring to society? A good example is Supplier Pay. Marco Polo will enable companies of all sizes around the world to access working capital solutions, in many cases for the first time. A supplier only needs an internet connection and a bank account, and they can view their approved invoices and request early payment and see the status of their invoices and payments at all times. Provides them with the cash flow to fund their business, pay their bills, and not only survive, but to thrive and grow. The second question from Yamazaki-san, what are the obstacles to success? The biggest obstacle is adoption. The adoption of any new technology has obstacles. The first is from a technology provider's perspective, from my perspective, is creating a compelling offering that provides value to the initial users to attract a core group of participants to start with. The second obstacle is to seed the network with the initial group of participants. And the biggest obstacle here is typically a resistance to change, a resistance to change from even a broken process. So digitization is a journey. It won't happen immediately. Marco Polo enables corporates to start how they choose in a small manner and expand at their own pace. You could connect, for example, to use receivables discounting and then expand to use some of the other modules on the network. So you don't have to change everything all at the same time. We are right in the middle of this stage right now, and we're in a good position. We have a core group of banks, and we have some corporates who are testing and piloting the solution. But we always welcome new banks and new corporates. The more participants, the more value for everyone. So please get involved if you are interested. That completes my session. Thanks for your attention. Arigato gozaimasu.
Level, perhaps towards the executive level as well. What will you say? Where do you see a typical resistance and from what level will be the most critical point? Leon?
I'm sorry, Shin, I missed the start of that question.
Oh, sorry. Maybe I kind of switched the audio side. So maybe repeat that question. You mentioned about the resistance to change. That's something you have observed. Now, I'm just curious to understand which part in the corporate, from executive to the working level, which part will you be the most important in critical kind of level to change?
I think it ultimately requires the buy-in or the support from both levels. You must have the support from an executive level because that enables a company to focus. If you have an executive level that is pushing a particular message or a particular project, then that helps everybody within the company to focus on that one objective. So it definitely requires support from executive level, but really importantly, it also requires support at the working level because the working level are the people who are living and breathing the problems today and the solutions in the future. So it's not enough to just have the executive team pushing change. The working team must understand, why are we changing? What is the reason for the change? What is the next step? And then what is the step after that? And then what is ultimately the end goal? Because in a lot of cases, digitization also has the potential to change jobs, and move from a very manual operational center to a very digital operation center. So, it involves the need to make sure that those people are also repurposed potentially or there is a way to manage that internally. So it really requires it across the entire company, which is another one of the challenges. It's not just a single team or a single executive. It requires full support.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Thank you very much for your insight, Leon. Much appreciated. Now, I would like to move to the next panelist, who is from Thailand. Kun Orapon, may I invite you? Mr. Orapon, you might be on the mute. Mr. Orapon, I'm afraid you might be on the mute. Welcome.
Hang on 1 second. Why can't I unmute? No.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay. All right. And can you see the slide?
Yes, I can see your slides.
Okay, let me start. Okay. My name is Orapong Tianyan. I'm the CEO of a company called Digital Ventures. Digital Ventures is a subsidiary of Siam Commercial Bank, the largest bank in Thailand. Last year, I was one of the 4 presidents of the bank. We created a platform to facilitate supply chain trades that we believe that there's a potential that this platform can be something even bigger than the bank. So starting at the beginning of the year, we spun this out as a fintech startup company to expand the platform globally. So let me go through with you quickly on the first question that Yamasaki-san has posted. Right? How would blockchain change our world? Right? If you're following the technology, you will hear quite often that many people believe that blockchain has a potential to change the world even bigger than what internet has changed the world so far. I just imagine that all of the trades, all of the money transfer can happen in the open network as easy as you sending an email or sending a chat messaging today. Right? And blockchain is the fundamental technology that could enable that to happen. Let me run through 4 scenarios to share with you how blockchain could change the world. Right? The first one, the underlying technology of blockchain is called distributed ledger technology, or DLT. And if you look in the supply chain trades world, right, it's all about exchanging of document. Typically, it starts from you issue a purchase order from a buyer, go to a supplier ship the products with shipping document, right? The goods come to the warehouse issue good receipt document, go back to the supplier issue an invoice. Then all of the documents come together in account payable department for the payment to be processed. Right? If you look at all of these documents, then they're just ledgers. Ledgers is nothing just complex. It's just recording information on a piece of paper. Right? And it's a piece of paper on purchase order, on good receipt, on invoices. What blockchain enable us to do is to be able to securely and less complex way of sharing all of these ledgers. And as a result of that, you can realize a lot of productivity gains. Just imagine that all your trade information, trade data can be easily shared on the open network. Right? Once it can be shared, then it can be automated. Right? Therefore, first thing that we see is that blockchain can significantly deliver productivity gain, and also reducing fraud. Because if you see all the data end to end, you have much better control of your trades and reduce your leakage. Second scenario is that if your trade and your payment information can be integrated in one platform. Right? For example, if all of the purchase order is issued and all of the related ledgers is happening on the same platform to the point of making the payment, right? You have two very strong validations. One, you can validate whether the trade is real or not, right? From being able to verify the purchase order against a good receipt, against the invoice. And at the same time, you also control the payment. Right? By doing that, right, you can end up providing liquidity into the system, provide lending to your supplier at very low risk. Because as long as you can verify that the trades are real and you control the payment, you can easily provide lending into the platform without worrying whether the money that you lend out will be paid or not. Right? The third scenario is that if you look at the trade documents today, right, whether their purchase order, their good receipt, or the invoice, those documents represent a promise to pay at a point in time in the future. Right? Today, we all rely on banks to provide liquidity into the supply chain. But just imagine that with all of the trade flows in your company, if you can tokenize it, which can be done with blockchain technology, you tokenize it, then you can securitize it. Means that you can turn that token around and sell it to investors who's willing to accept the risk. Right? Therefore, blockchain will enable you to enhance liquidity of the company without having to rely on banks. Right? If you have a lot of trades, you can tokenize your trades, you can resell that to investor. Right? And lastly, with blockchain, all of the records are secure and immutable, means that once you commit the trade, there's complete auditability, traceability, such that when you deal with the government, you deal with the tax collectors, right? They have access to the same information. Therefore, you can simplify the way you file tax and the way you do record keeping in your company. We did this as a platform. We launched a platform called Blockchain for Procure to Pay in August of 2018. Right? There was a question that what's the biggest challenge in using blockchain in the real world? Right? If you look at our ramp-up curve on the left-hand side, we launched it in August 2018. Right? At the end of year 2018, we were able to onboard 10 companies. And the reason why it was like that, because we learned after launching it that in the real world, supply chain trade is very complex. Right? Sometimes your supplier deliver a product to you, you might have partial delivery, you might reject some of the products because of quality. There's needs to issue credit note, debit notes, right? Prices could be different, right? The price at delivery could be different than the price at purchase or in the purchase order. So all of those exceptions made it harder for us to scale. That's why in the first year we only scaled 10 companies. Then, if you look at the end of year 2019. We were up to 1,451 companies. And the reason being that we learned from our earlier version and we start fixing all of the gaps. Right? And if you look, the data that I showed today is end of May, we have already had more than 5,000 companies using this. If you look at end of July, we already surpassed 6,000 companies. So we're on track that by the end of this year, there'll be over 10,000 companies using this platform. And the pipeline that we have, we believe that by the end of 2021, we will have about 40,000 companies using this platform. So we have overcome the early entry barrier, and I think right now we're quite confident that at least for Thailand, we are scaling it rapidly. And the reason we're able to do that because of the productivity gain that's enabled by this platform. We look at our existing customers, wide range of customers. What we have learned from about 2 years of using this is that we are able to deliver productivity increase at the rate of about 1.3 US dollar per invoice, up to 2.5 US dollar per invoice that is being processed. And the savings mainly come from the productivity gain and the elimination of labor involvement in the process. If you take procure to pay process, normally it consists of about 19 steps. Our platform automates 14 out of the 19 steps. That's why we deliver big saving. Right? And this saving is based on labor rate in Thailand. And if you apply this in Japan or if you apply this in country with higher labor cost, we believe that the productivity gain will be even higher than this. Another thing that is very interesting of distributed ledger is the ability to bring all of the data together, especially at the very detailed level, enable us to detect and eliminate fraud. Today, most companies, when we process invoices, because one invoice you can have like 100 line items, right? It's very difficult to do the matching at the line item level. Therefore, most companies do the matching at the header level. So if you have the amount in the good receipt equal to amount in the invoice, equal to amount in the PO, then you pay. But in reality, your line level detail could be different. Therefore, it opens up for possibility of frauds. Right? But with distributed ledger and with the ability to integrate data from purchase order, from good receipt, and from invoices, we can check everything down to the line item level. So if there's any discrepancy, we'll detect that. And with the ability to integrate trade data and payment processes onto one platform, be able to provide lower cost financing to the suppliers. Just give you an example. In Thailand, if a supplier wants invoice financing, typically a supplier need to take the approved invoice to a bank. Right? A bank spend about 3 to 5 days to approve the invoice. And because the bank doesn't know whether the same supplier take the same invoice to multiple banks or not, the bank needs to compensate for the risk by providing the supplier with higher interest rate. Right? But because our platform, we know we can validate that the trades are real, we can approve financing on the same day. Right? We know that the payment once happened, it happened on our platform. We take collection at payment. Therefore, we're able to provide lending at more than 10% lower rate than the ongoing market rate. Right? And because we control the payment, we be able to execute payment on time. Currently, even if your company give a supplier 30 days payment term, right? In reality, it's not 30 days because in reality, the payment is executed in batches, right? So it's 30 days plus the next payment date, payment batch running date. So in reality, you're talking 45 to 60 days anyway. Once you have this kind of platform, what we have seen buyers being able to do is to go back to the suppliers to change the term from 30 days to do 45 or 60 days. But the difference this time is that when they said 45 or 60, the payment happened exactly on the date. right? And the last point may be unique for Thailand because everything is on the platform. The government came in and is auditing the platform. If everything goes well by the end of October this year, the government will change the law that the company that use the platform will not have to submit paper records, nor have they had to maintain the record for 10 years, just in case for if the government want to audit the trade. So this is what we have done so far. So we at the phase now, we're looking to scale overseas. So if any of the participants here are interested in exploring this, we'll be more than happy to engage with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Orapong. Much appreciated your thorough presentation. In due of time, I'm going to hold my burning question and probably better to pass on the floor to Jesse. Jesse.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you to SMBC and Nikkei for putting this event on. My name is Jesse Chenard. I'm the CEO of a company called Monetigo. Monetigo is a blockchain company or a fintech company focused on the financial services space. I started in technology about 20 years ago. I've seen a lot of different transformations. I've been a part of a lot of them from the consumer side of things, from the media side of things. I got into fintech about 5 years ago. And one of the things that I quickly learned is that the business-to-business side of fintech didn't really get the digital wave that a lot of other areas have had. As pointed out on the panel before, a lot of these systems that are out there today, if they are systems, if they're not just Excel spreadsheets, are very disparate. There's not a lot of interoperability. There's a lot of complexity to them. A lot of paper still is exchanged in a lot of cases. And so what we set out to do about 5 years ago was really look at how DLT specifically could alleviate some of these problems. So one of the first areas where we've had success and had a production network running in India is very similar to what Mr. Orapong was just speaking about, is reducing fraud in receivables financing. As he mentioned, a bill may be presented to multiple financiers in an environment, and they have no way of knowing if it's going to be fraudulently or double financed. And so what we do is we provide a network for people to discreetly communicate with each other as to whether they've financed an invoice previously or not. So we started that in India in 2008, March of 2018, and that has been running there. Initially, it was focused for 3 receivables marketplaces, similar to a lot of the fintechs out there that are looking at small businesses and aggregating them to provide them short-term financing. These 3 exchanges needed the ability to communicate financing amongst them. Blockchain was a great use case for it. The factoring industry in India caught wind of that. The finance industry in India caught wind of it. They all wanted to join the platform. That transferred into some interest in Latin America, now also here in Asia. And so in terms of, what we think of, going back to your question, Mr. Yamazaki-san, how is this transforming society and what changes are it bringing? A lot of what we will see with DLT and blockchain is not seeing it. A lot of what we experience from a consumer, and it's at a sort of a people or a personal level. We don't know if it's an Oracle database or a Microsoft database in the back end. It becomes somewhat blind to us or invisible to us. So I think what's happening where you see with Monetigo reducing fraud in receivables financing, and those companies are focused on the small to medium-sized enterprises. So these small businesses that really do have working capital needs, it reduces the fraud. And as Mr. Orapong said, right now there's a risk premium priced into the financing that they offer, so they're able to offer more competitive rates. It is literally the engine of the economy, according to the World Bank. And so, that's a very positive effect. And then, I think in terms of on the more upper side of things, there's a democratization of finance that's happening. Mr. Orapong also mentioned tokenization. Once these assets are digitally created and tokenized, the ability to securitize them, to sell them out to institutional investors, retail investors, even you can break it up. There's a massive opportunity there. So we look at the space as very ripe with opportunity. We look for discrete applications. So again, it's really looking at right now the complex world of trade finance, but with the very simple application of how do we reduce fraud, double spending. And so we've got some good work on that. We've got some good partners. We are, like I say, rolling it out here in Asia. Thailand is one of the areas we've got good opportunities. Singapore, everywhere we go, when we say, would you like to reduce fraud in receivables financing, we generally get a very favorable response. I know we're pressed for time here, so I'll leave it at that in terms of what we do, but in terms of our products, what have you. So what are the obstacles? Having had a deployed network up and running since March of 2018 in India, we've seen a lot of obstacles. I think that the biggest obstacle, as Leon described before, was inertia. People don't want to change if the system is working. Why fix it? There's also the scale of what we're working on in a highly regulated environment. It may be slightly more expensive and more cumbersome to release commercial paper the way it's done in certain instances, or bank guarantees or bonds. But because of the high sort of value of the transaction, it's okay. If it's not broke, don't fix it. And your compliance people will always say no and tell you not to do something different. So, I think that's a big piece there. What is the competition that we have? Excel spreadsheets in a lot of cases. I was floored to learn that several major banks that we had discussed how they manage their commercial paper issuances and track them as an IPA and what have you. Some of them use Excel spreadsheets for this. So there's internal homegrown processes that even back in 2000, when we were looking at digitizing certain things, we would have just built a simple access database for. So I think that's the biggest piece. And then, as touched on by the previous panelist, it's how do you get that network effect? Our sort of strategy around that has been providing a very simple solution that doesn't require you to replace the whole ecosystem. It can be bolted onto what you're doing today. It can be bolted onto what folks like Orapong and Leon are doing with TradeIX and Digital Ventures or Peer to Pay. So that's, I think where the real challenges lie, and obviously the regulatory piece. That's always a big piece. Going in there and speaking with the regulators, doing the education. R3 and the other people in the space have done a great job of that, including central banks and anyone who wants to be a part of it to come in, learn. As these guys have said before, this is going to be very impactful, and it's going to be quite an exciting time to be in banking again. So that's my piece there, and I'll turn it over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jesse, and also being conscious of the time. I'm pretty sure the double financing is an issue and the problem and the challenge for every other bank, no matter which country you belong to. And I'm pretty sure you'll be welcome to Japan. And obviously, as one of the Japanese banks, we're looking forward to kind of work together with you too.
Great, okay. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah. Now the time to switch to Japanese back again. 赤羽様、NTD データの赤羽様、ぜひ次最後プレゼンよろしくお願いいたします。
何分やってよろしいんでしょうか。もう終わりだと思うんですけれども。
申し訳ないですけど、あと5分で。
How many minutes do I have? I think we need to start to wrap up. I'm sorry, you have 5 minutes, if you please. Understood. So I'd like to introduce our initiative called Trade Waltz. This is a trade platform using blockchain. This here was established in 2017, August 2017. This is a cross-industry consortium covering major trade parties. We have the 3 big banks, insurance companies, as well as trade houses and shipping companies. These are members of the consortium to identify issues, and once these services are to be launched, they will be placed on this platform. Since when we create a new system using blockchain, there exists these barriers among different companies, but our aim of establishing this consortium was to first and foremost eliminate that barrier. And the characteristic of the platform is that this is cross-industry industry, and it covers a wide range of trade documents. All of them are digitalized. And please be mindful that they are not PDF. They are all structured documents placed on the platform. And the accumulated data will enable entry by third parties. And we aim to create this kind of ecosystem. So our aim is not only to gather this kind of data, but what kind of change we can bring to society through blockchain. What we want to realize is to transform from the previously paper-based way of doing things to electronic exchange of documents. So in many companies, paper used to be a central part in various documents, but by transforming this into data on a platform, everyone can access the platform and share all those documents. So there are various technologies available. We have Trade Lens and Marco Polo. And here, what we want to achieve is a vertical integration. We want all the players in a particular industry to be able to use this technology and also gradually expand geographically. So the productivity gains have already been mentioned by other speakers. But here in our consortium as well, we've done some research and demonstration to prove that this kind of saving is achieved through the use of the platform. And oftentimes when this kind of platform is established, it becomes a challenge how to engage small and medium-sized enterprises. We provide necessary web interfaces for these SMEs to make sure that the platform extends coverage to these enterprises. And the fraud detection and prevention was also mentioned. A JCCIB of Thailand joined us in an experiment last year. This is an organization of institutions in Thailand, and in our experiment, we were able to prove that the double finance was properly checked. And what we regard important here is that we have entity data services available in Japan, and having them or offering them to other parties in the world, that is not what we want. We want to make sure that this independent operation is ensured for every participating country, and it also ensures fairness in data governance. This is a franchise type of ecosystem. If features available in Japan can also be usable in ASEAN countries, of course, they should be offered. And of course, features developed in ASEAN countries can be useful in others. They should be extended. So that is a kind of ecosystem that we want to establish. The reason why we decided on this kind of model is that I talked about one barrier that blockchain needs to overcome. The other is that since we're talking about trade that crosses borders, blockchain also needs to address that issue. Having node in every country, every company would not be feasible. Large companies, GAFA, Google, Amazon, data will concentrate and be controlled by a handful of companies. We need to make sure to prevent that from happening. So data governance is an important issue in building a platform. And of course, our platform covering borders and providing services to all areas is not something that is plausible. So we need to work with Marco Polo and other types of platforms that are introduced. We need to make sure that our platform works with other platforms so that our customers can have peace of mind and work on digitalization. If they only need to rely on one platform, this would not be efficient. So this requires interoperability. That is the third barrier that must be overcome. Interoperability must be discussed from multiple perspectives. Of course, we have the International Chamber of Commerce that has been working on standardizing trade for many years. And this kind of organization and others are working to present a forum for discussing interoperability. We want to make sure to cooperate with them. And Davos meeting at the end of January this year, we participated in this signing ceremony with ICC. So not just us, but 10 other companies who are also members of the consortium took part in this ceremony. So not only to automate a trade with blockchain, we emphasize the importance of interoperability to the world. So these are some of our initiatives. And this year, we started our service. It's now connected to NACS, Japanese customs system. We would like to expand to overseas, and in several years' time, we would like to achieve 100% paperless trade. So we hope to work with the other parties to further promote digitalization. That's all from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Akahane. So we have heard from 4 panelists listened about the platform Open Account is Marco Polo or Digital Ventures. More than 10,000 are on board. And Monetago to eliminate the fraud and to ensure the originality of the documents. So all these highlights were introduced. I hope that this would be useful information for all the participants. We shall just have to close this session. I thank you very much for your kind participation and attention.
Thank you very much once again to the panelists. Thank you indeed.